Mary Louise Cook here, now joined by Dave Cook, a longtime sports information director at Eastern Washington University. We're taking a look back at 2010 and that national championship title won over Delaware. So first off, let's talk about, we see the Inferno behind you there. Tell me about the significance of that. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Tell me about the significance of that in 2010.
Well, when you go back to 2009, we had a player named Taiwan Jones, which he's still playing in the NFL, Buffalo Bills right now. But Taiwan Jones was phenomenal, and we figured out, hey, he's really, really good on artificial turf, and as a running back. And so we ended up through kind of a lucky situation with Michael Ruse, another one of our former players who did well in the NFL, to get the red field installed in time for the 2010 season. And we didn't think at the time it was going to be magic, but it really was.
Well, definitely an iconic part of Eastern Washington for sure. Now, you talk about Taiwan Jones. So in the semifinals game against Villanova, unfortunately, he went out with a foot injury. Mario Brown came in for him. How significant was Mario Brown, not only in that semifinals game, but in that championship game as well?
Well, I think the feeling around the team and everybody, how are we going to get this done without Taiwan? Taiwan was so dynamic during the year, and even though we really barely won a lot of games, that was part of the magic of everything, is that we just eked out wins all the time. But Taiwan was the superstar. There was no doubt about it. And so when it was the North Dakota State game, he got hurt, and we still magically pulled out that win and then beat Villanova to advance the title game. But Mario was just a stud, and he was so young. And I remember just even with media exposure was kind of crazy for him, because here he was replacing Taiwan Jones, the All-American, and it couldn't have worked out better. Mario had a great game, made a big catch in the national championship game, and we just really enjoy all the players who got to contribute to that title.
Now, looking at that championship game at the half, it was 12-0 Delaware. Do you remember how you were feeling at that time? Did it ever feel like, that game was a lost cause maybe?
Well, up in the press box, obviously I wrote the story that we lost, as time goes on, you like to be prepared for the end of games. And so, but we had to rewrite pretty fast. Bo Levi Mitchell, the transfer quarterback from SMU, found some magic. He had some great receivers that year, Brandon Kaufman and Nicholas Edwards and Greg Hurd. And they just came together at the right time. And we ended up scoring those 3 touchdowns late. And then our defense was solid. We had a really great defense with J.C. Sherritt, who was the Buchanan Award winner that year, and then the twins, the Johnson brother twins, Matt and Zach, and they were just fantastic. Renard Williams on the defensive line. They hung tough at the end, and we got the win. It was pretty incredible.
What would you say was the moment in that game where the energy really shifted and you were like, okay, I need to change the story that I'm putting out here?
Well, probably after the first touchdown, because there was still plenty of time. But there was probably the real turning point was when we converted a 4th down, but it went to review, and then they had some logistical problems with the chains at the time, and the Delaware coach was pretty upset, and that was kind of the turning point, because we scored again after that, but that year was full of those kind of things, just all the different comebacks we had to make, all the different luck we had to have on our side, and I think it ran out, because obviously we've made it to the championship game once, but we've had some things go awry over the course of years, but I think we used up all our luck on that one season.
Well, you talk about that controversial 4th down play in the 4th quarter, and there was a 10-minute delay that happened. What do you remember about those 10 minutes and just the way that you were feeling in those moments?
It's funny, the whole day was so surreal, and I know our coaches and players have talked about it ever since, that going to the stadium and just seeing all the people there that we normally don't see on road trips, number one, Uh, but just the atmosphere was so incredible that it all is kind of a blur. So 10 minutes out of that day is really, just a matter of seconds to me that I can't remember, everything about that particular play. I remember having lots of conversations about it and seeing lots of dialogue afterwards. But at the time, it really didn't strike me as anything out of the ordinary, other than just another review, which was fairly new at that time in 2010. It was having review at the FCS level was fairly new.
Hmm. Now, when you look back on that day, what would you say was most memorable to you?
Well, like I said, the fans and just we had an alumni tent area, and at that point, I was at Eastern for 20 years, and so there were so many people I saw. I didn't want to have to work that day, and it was just so much fun seeing all the people from around the country come back to Frisco for that game. And we see them every once in a while, but not all at that one place. We got the similar feel just a couple of years ago when we made the championship game again. And again, there was just so many people. We had an alumni football function a couple of years ago, and those are the things that will always strike me as the most exciting. Is that celebration of Eastern football history, going back to my first year in '85. A couple of years before that is when they went to FCS and the 1AA level, and just seeing that celebration, it means the world to me. And hopefully, we'll have more in the future.
As you said, you've been at Eastern for over 30 years. Looking back on that championship, that title, how significant was that not only for Eastern Washington, but for the Big Sky Conference as a whole?
uh, Montana kind of put us on the map at this level, at the 1AA level. Montana State before that, Idaho State even, with their championships. But it was kind of a changing of the guard almost, because Eastern was always kind of second to Montana. We'd play them tough, but we couldn't always beat them. We'd go to Missoula and just have a hard time. But really, through the years, we've made up ground, and kind of turned the corner in 2010. And so that over the years, that strikes me. I first started here when Dick Sorens was head coach. Matter of fact, that going to Frisco in 2010, the biggest regret I have is that Dick got sick and we couldn't be roommates there, because that was the plan. We were going to be roommates on the road, and I was very looking forward to that, because back in the 90s and when I was here, and we would actually room together on the road. And so he became a great friend, and fellow Eagle. He's still hanging around. I don't see him as often in the pandemic, but Dick Sorens is an icon, and that whole trajectory of getting to the national championship needed to be shared with him and so many other players from that era.
Very cool. Well, Dave, I so appreciate your time today and your insight looking back on this. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's funny how this comes up and you just scratch the surface. I mean, I look forward to the day that they have the induction of that team into the Hall of Fame and the reunion of players coming back, because it's going to be pretty sensational.